Hi, I'm Peter Snowden, Head of Marketing.
Stephen Williams, Research and Insight.
We just want 10 minutes of your time today just to talk through the winter plans, a bit of evaluation from last year, and also what the national plans are telling us and how we might support that locally. So first of all, Stephen will take us through the evaluation.
Okay, yeah, so I'm going to keep this short and sweet, but we can send out the full evaluation report for you to look at in more detail if you want. So we did a full evaluation of Choosewell through focus groups and online survey, and also I should say that we are engaged in other research activities, and we've also fed in from that as well, as there's an awful lot of overlap. So the key findings were that Choosewell, there was a real lack of group targeting. So a lot of people were very aware of it, had real reach, but everyone thought it was focused at someone else, either panicky parents or older people or recent immigrants or drunks or unemployed, and the list goes on. There was also, when we explored this with our groups, a real lack of understanding about what different NHS services provide. They know that A&E is over here and it's a catch-all, it can do everything, but what about all the different things in between? Walk-in centres, urgent care centres, minor injuries units, GPs, pharmacists. Actually, they do an awful lot of different things which a lot of people aren't really aware of, and so they're just defaulting to A&E. And NHS 111, well, that was a mystery to a lot, but obviously the forthcoming campaign will hopefully overcome that. Respondents already felt they were choosing well. Because we often focused on don't go to A&E, and these people went to A&E with these conditions, they could have gone somewhere else. It was very much a don't do campaign. The impact of that was we didn't tell people where they could go. Actually, let's not talk about 999 and A&E. Let's talk about, did you know that these things can all be treated here? These services all provide these different propositions. Have you thought about going there? So that services we felt really need to be sold with key motivators such as the speed of consultation or ease of travelling, and we also need to build trust and familiarity. What really came out was that people chose because of where friends or family had gone or where they'd gone previously, and that it worked well. So we know that, for example, 999 and A&E are really recognisable, excellent brands, so people would naturally go there, and we need to do the same and build the same kudos up with those others. As I've sort of already intimated, respondents were interested to know about the pressures that A&E is under and the system is under, but they often felt powerless to do anything about that. And so respondents actually questioned, why aren't we explicitly outlining what the alternatives are, directing them where else they can go, rather than saying, we're under an awful lot of pressure, don't come here, don't do this. Actually, have you thought about going here or going there or going something else? So that was the key findings that are coming out of that evaluation from last year.
So what that gave us then is a sense of what we should learn from, and also how we might pitch next year's campaign. And what that did is gave us a new set of principles. These principles would be supported by the campaign, and would set out how we actually run the thing. So some of those, for example, are we should focus much more on self-care and much more on those services that operate the lower tier of the urgent care system, so pharmacy, self-care, walk-in centres, etc. There's, as Stephen said, there's lots of confusion about what they were, and actually lots of confusion around what the proposition of the pharmacy was. So we think there's lots more to be done through this campaign to build patient self-confidence, self-efficacy, self-service, so that patients know where to go and how to self-treat, self-care, before they ever reach the higher tiers of emergency care. We should be far more targeted. Choosewell, I think, sought to reach everybody, everywhere, with a wide message, and we're very much of the opinion that we need to be far more targeted to those people who tend to use those services more often. Certain groups or communities. We'll talk about what those are very shortly. That we should be more directional, that we should be more positive, so do go here, not don't go here, was the key message from that. We should not mention A&E or 999. We don't believe that needs any more promotion, and the feeling is when you mention that, people use it. So we also believe that some of our approaches should not use mass media as much, so the bus and the paper and the radio, but to be far more targeted in two ways. That is through digital approaches, so using demographically targeted digital messaging and approaches, but also on-the-ground engagement. And they really are the two planks of our campaign going forward. It's worth saying that we had started work on this campaign, a whole set of creatives, but then we had the news that NHS England had signalled that it was to do a single national campaign. So the national campaign, what do we know? Well, we know that there's a single campaign that is taken in flu, NHS 111, Keep Warm, Keep Well. Some of these have run concurrently in the past, but have sometimes competed as well, and they are generally after the same audience. They have pulled the budget, so it's about £10.5 million across PHE, NHS England, Monitor and other agencies. And they will be targeting the 11.5 million C2D&E cohorts of patients in the following groups. So that's children, parents of children between 0 and 5, over 65s, and also patients with long-term conditions. And the LTCs that are being looked at primarily are those that are exacerbated by winter, those conditions that you can take action against to prevent your future admission. And admission is the key word actually, because Choose Well sought to prevent attendances. It wanted to stop people bouncing around the system between urgent care centres and A&E units. But NHS England's stance on this is that actually attendances aren't a problem here. What it is really about is admissions. If we sort the admissions problem out and provide advice and guidance for people to, for example, respiratory patients or those with respiratory illness, to take steps to avoid future admission, that will help the system. So their focus is very much on what are those things that people can do or should know to prevent their future or later admission.
Just a bit of insight there. 70% of the NHS budget is going on people with long-term conditions. And when you look at long-term conditions through the winter period, the majority of them are quite stable. But COPD, so people suffering from different respiratory conditions, as Peter's just outlined, absolutely spikes during the winter period. And that's why there's a real focus on that group, both through carers, both through the over 65s and particularly the over 80s. And how to target those groups. So NHS England, one of their key tactics there is they've produced a booklet, and it's going to about 10 million homes across the country. And we understand that Manchester lights up as like a Belisha beacon for COPD, but it's a real targeted approach focused on those key groups that frequently try to be stoic, don't go to the GP, don't go to the pharmacy, stay at home. The condition gets very bad, and then they have to go to A&E because they're in such a bad situation. The issue for the A&E departments is not necessarily the through flow, but actually those who are coming in late after their condition not being managed and then having to be admitted. And it's at that point that the system, you know, in sort of, in-house terms, collapses and fails. So that's the real target and the focus. So as Peter sort of outlined, our research and our parameters that we put together, and we also started to profile A&E users because we definitely realised that we need to take that very focused approach. Has now been simplified to a certain extent from the NHS with the NHS England approach. So we're delighted that our own approach was in total accordance with that. Yep. But that's now been simplified down to those sort of two key groups, which is the parents of 0 to 4-year-olds, and then that sort of 65 and 80 plus group. And also with the NHS England approach is very much a large scale national broadcast with us filling in the gaps at the bottom with that face-to-face, very targeted, tailored engagement. And the point that we're at now is we're working very closely with account managers and in turn with the SRGs to make sure that we deliver a targeted face-to-face engagement approach and targeted on-the-ground approach both through social media and face-to-face, which really tackles those groups and targets them in a sophisticated and nuanced way.
Okay. So some key messages from us then, because this is moving very quickly, and we clearly next month we're in winter period, and we know that in previous years this has been delivered very late, and there's very little confidence locally. I think that NHS England will provide the answers. So what we know is that from the week commencing 31st of August, there will be national campaign materials available that will cover flu, keep warm, keep well, NHS 111, which incidentally it's worth adding, there will be a pilot ad campaign for 111 in the West Midlands. It won't hit the national press, or the campaign won't take place nationally for 111 until March next year, but in the West Midlands and London there will be activity in September, so the same time as flu. Okay. Other tranches of this campaign are medicines waste, self-care, know your local services, that kind of thing. We don't yet know what the creatives and the messaging will be, but we have seen some proofs, if you like, that agencies that NHS England are working with have sent back. And there's two different approaches, one of which is clinical endorsement, having photographs of local clinicians saying, you know, you should do this because. The other is a little bit more, bit bolder, and that is kind of raising the fear of winter, and it uses words like let's win against winter, you know, winter is a bully. So it does really create a sense of fear, that and a creative sense of urgency as well around the need to act earlier on. So we know all that, we know there'll be a national media plan, we don't know what that is yet. So what we're doing now is, as Stephen says, working with account leads locally to come up with very localised digital and on-the-ground engagement plans that will support what we call local amplification of the national approach. It may take in some media, in many cases it will not, because that has already been booked and paid for nationally. It doesn't mean that there's to be any less money spent on this locally. That's a very key message actually that was reinforced for us by the regional comms director at NHS England. What it means is the effort and resource that would have been spent on campaign creation and creative generation is now to be spent on local amplification. So as we say, digital and on-the-ground engagement. So I think that's it from me. Just one more thing to say is we had started work on a campaign before we learned the national approach that was more about attendances actually. It's more like a Choose Well campaign in that it would sort of seek to describe and explain the local health, local urgent and emergency care system for local health economies. And bear in mind that this campaign, this winter campaign from the national team will end in March. It's very much a winter campaign. So what we're also doing at the same time is proposing a set of creatives, a set of creative approaches, one of which Stephen has here, around that year-long approach. And this is a longer-term, year-long approach that will take in all the key moments, holidays and Easter and all those other times, and aims to build confidence in self-care and describe and explain the local health system in those areas. So we're working those plans up as well, but I'll pretty much focus on the winter plans now, and are working to get those plans before system resilience groups throughout this month and September. Anything to add?
Yeah, I think I just want to add really that the key point from us from this is both to inform you and update you, but secondly to say we're really keen to work with you as account managers, so we can understand the nuances of the local health economy that you're operating in, and secondly how we can move from a position of delivering on winter pressures but then also expanding so that we have a campaign which runs all the way through the year. So for example, we're setting up Facebook pages and that type of thing, which in order to have longevity, in order to really work well, we need to keep using it over the time so we can get following and that type of thing. So that's the two key things. So please approach us with any ideas you might have or any thoughts you want to share.
Okay, thanks for your time, and we'll get one of these updates out to you if they're useful and we get good feedback next month. Thank you.
Super.